Alright guys, this is the third of our three Vietnam slides as we finish up the war here. And we will start with a development back home known as the Pentagon Papers. This was a series of articles and documents released by the New York Times. A former Pentagon Defense Department official named Daniel Ellsberg, guy who worked at the Pentagon in the Defense Department, released these documents to the New York Times, and they were evidence or proof of the fact that both the Kennedy and Johnson administrations had been lying to the American public about what was going on in Vietnam, including the Gulf of Tonkin incident. Proved that the USS Maddox never was fired on, that the government had created the whole story of them being attacked to get a reason to get into the war. So Ellsberg releases these documents, the New York Times prints them, and it really makes the Kennedy and Johnson administrations look very bad. Doesn't say anything about Nixon, but Nixon gets very upset that these documents are released. Okay? Now, as part of this sort of clampdown on the president's power that had been granted through the Gulf of Tonkin resolution, if you'll remember, Congress gave President Johnson basically unchecked power to send troops to Vietnam, to basically everything but declare war. They're going to start to walk that back in what is called the War Powers Act. Right? This is November 1973. And the War Powers Act is going to require that the president report to Congress that he has sent troops to a foreign conflict, or that he has substantially enlarged American combat troops. Say, we had, 5,000, let's say he sends 20,000 more all of a sudden. He has to report that to Congress. And as part of this is the important part, those soldiers are only allowed to stay wherever the president has sent them 60 days, unless Congress approves it for an additional 30. And when those 30 are up, Congress has to approve them staying 30 more. And when those 30 are up, Congress has to approve them staying 30 more. So the president can send them wherever they want to, but it's up to Congress whether they stay there or not. So with any military conflict around the world, if you've got a problem, unless we have declared war, which only Congress can do, is in Vietnam. If you got a problem with the soldiers being in Vietnam, blame Congress, because they're the ones keeping them there. The president may have sent them there to begin with, but it's up to Congress to keep them there. If they don't authorize them staying, they have to come home. Okay? So this really gives Congress back its war-making powers. They trusted Johnson with them because they were a Democratic Congress. They don't trust Nixon with it. So they're going to take away that power that they had given to Johnson with the War Powers Act. Okay? Now, that coincided very nicely with also in 1973, President Nixon announces that all remaining troops in Vietnam will be coming home. Okay? In January 73, Nixon announces that that the remaining troops will be coming home. By March, he can proclaim that the last troops have withdrawn from Vietnam. So really by March 73, all of the troops are out of Vietnam, other than just, military police kind of thing there at the U.S. Embassy. Right? Now, with the United States troops removed, South Vietnam is going to quickly fall to North Vietnam. Okay? They'll hold out for about 2 years. but they will be losing ground constantly. Right? The picture here that you see on your screen, very famous photograph here. This is the roof of the American Embassy. Okay? These are all American Embassy workers being evacuated from Saigon, the capital of South Vietnam. Helicopters would land on the roof, and they would climb these stairs here up to board the helicopters. These are American Embassy workers and South Vietnamese nationals who begged for a way out of the country. Nixon had proclaimed that that he was going to a peace with honor, as he called it. It is not the honorable end of the war that he had envisioned. Literally, North Vietnamese troops were only blocks away from capturing the American Embassy when the last of the U.S. Embassy workers made their escape from the top of the embassy. So they held out as long as they could, took as many South Vietnamese nationalists with us as we could, but by the end of April 1975, all of Vietnam would fall to North Vietnamese communist forces. And still to this day, Vietnam is a communist country. Right? Saigon, the capital of South Vietnam, would be renamed Ho Chi Minh City. Vietnam is reunited under one government as a communist government. Now, technically speaking, and this is a great technicality, we didn't lose the Vietnam War, because when we withdrew, South Vietnam was still an independent country. By the time South Vietnam falls to North Vietnamese forces, we are long gone. So technically we didn't lose the war. South Vietnam did. This will prove to be the most unpopular war in American history. It cost the United States about $118 billion with a B dollars, along with just about 57,000 American soldiers dead, 300,000 wounded. Right? But the most unpopular war in American history by far. And as the Vietnam War goes from the 50s throughout the 60s into the 70s, this is the longest war in American history as well. So this will color everything else that happens in the 1960s. And hopefully now you understand a little bit about Vietnam, because everything else we talk about this unit will have something to do with it. So anyway, there you go. The Vietnam War from an American perspective.